Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome wherever you are in the world. We're so happy to have you here with us today. This is USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. I am the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network, where we currently have 29 live broadcasts each week. Our show today is The Corner Bookstore, and my co-host and friend, DIANN BOEHM, has the day off, so I will be welcoming our guest right now. Our guest is joining us from Ireland, and she is a #1 best-selling author, and her name is Val Collins. Let's welcome her to the program. Hi, Val.
Hi, Dr. JACALYN. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. We had an opportunity to chat just a little bit backstage, and you were sharing some background about Ireland. So for those who've never been or thinking of going, what's it like there?
Oh, Ireland is marvelous if you come on a good day, if you can find a good day to come, but it rains an awful lot, I'm afraid.
And does that affect your ability to write, the fact that it's raining? I mean, obviously not, because you keep churning out books. So how does your environment impact you and the content that you put out?
Oh, not at all. I mean, if you live in Ireland, you just have to accept it's going to rain. If you only plan to do things in good weather, you'll never do anything. So you just live your life as if it's going to rain every single day, and you'll never be cut out.
You're never disappointed then. I love it. So Val, many people who watch this show are authors, or they're aspiring authors, or they've written something and they've put it aside and they've never gone back to it. What was your journey to go down this path, and where did it start?
Okay. Well, actually, I think my journey was kind of unusual, because most people that you talk to will say they've been writing all their lives, and they started writing, when they were about 3, and they've been writing ever since. I started writing when I was about 4, maybe. And I wrote until I was about 10. And then when I reached the age of 10, I noticed that I shouldn't be writing stories without dialogue. So I decided I'd try and write dialogue, and I didn't like the results. And my 10-year-old brain decided that if I couldn't do it perfectly, I wasn't doing it at all. So I stopped writing, and I never wrote again until I was an adult. Now, about 6 years ago, I was made redundant from my job, and the economy was really bad in Ireland at that time. So I was just sitting around thinking, okay, what'll I do next? And then I decided, well, I was going to write a book. So that was it. I'd been made redundant, so I had enough money to last me for about a year. So I decided to take a year off and write my first book. That at the time was all I'd intended to write, but it went on to book 2, book 3, book 4, and book 5 will be out in March.
Wow, that is an incredible trajectory. What kind of work were you doing before this?
Oh, I did office work. I worked in HR for years and years and years.
And I used to call on HR managers. That's funny. HR executives as well. So Val, when you decided that, okay, I'm going to write a book, how did you decide what genre it was going to be in and what it was going to be about?
Okay, well, first of all, I thought I'd write YA, because it seemed to me that it would be easier than writing an adult book. And then about 3/4 of the way through it, I decided I was bored with this, and I always read thrillers. So why was I writing YA? So then I started writing a thriller.
That is interesting. And when you like to read, what kind of genres do you care for?
I still read thrillers. Well, I started reading when I was very young. I started reading when I was about 3. So I went through all the stages of all the different books. So I started off, like when I was a teenager, I used to read romance, and then I moved on to reading autobiographies and historical fiction, and I went on to the classics for a while, and then I found thrillers, and I stuck with thrillers, and I leave them occasionally to read other books, but mostly I just read thrillers.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Who would you say are your readers? Who's your audience?
Well, if you look at the reviews for my book, I'd say most of them are female, because I think females are more attracted to books about women. But some men who have read it have really liked it and have given it really good reviews as well. So I'd say almost anybody, really. It's not really for children, because it's more about a woman who's living a life, a married woman with a child. So I don't suppose it would really appeal to teenagers, but I'd say anybody over that, it's really for them.
Okay, thank you. And something that really people, I think, tend to overlook or don't regard as highly is the amount of research that goes into books. Tell us about your path with research for the books that you've written.
Okay, well, all of my books are set in Ireland. They're all based on people I know. They're based in areas that I have lived in and areas that I know well. The one thing that I had real problems with was the police, because I knew absolutely nothing about the police. And when I wrote my first book, I sent the first draft of it off to an editor. She was helping me write it. She was working as my mentor. And she looked at it and she said, "You cannot write a thriller without the police in it." But I had somehow managed to do that. So then I remembered that a friend of mine was in the police force. So I rang him. So for about the first 3 books, I'd say I rang him like constantly saying, "Okay, this is what's happened. What would the police do now?" So that was how I got my police into it. So without him, I really would have been the first author of thriller series, a detective series that never even mentioned the police.
And when you talk about a series, we've had other authors on here and they've said, well, I had the whole series planned out in advance, and others know I'm going one book at a time. What's your story?
No, I definitely had no plans to write a series. I planned to write book 1, and just the first book, and then at the end of book 1, when I was waiting to send the final draft off to get it finished off, I just happened to be reading through it, doing one last read, and I noticed where it mentioned that the main character's father-in-law had disappeared 15 years earlier. He'd walked out in the family and never been seen again. So it occurred to me, wouldn't that make a good story? So the first book Aoife didn't even have a surname. So I went back and I gave her a surname so that I could write out a series about it. When I finished the second series, I was talking to a friend of mine about a news story that had happened here where a man had murdered his entire family. That hadn't usually happened in Ireland. It was a very rare thing to happen here. And we were just talking about it in the middle of the conversation. I thought, well, wouldn't that make a good story? So that was my third story. And then my fourth story, I was listening to the news and I heard them talking about 2 young men who were walking along a cliffside and one of the men fell off and it was an accident. But I thought to myself, because this is the way my brain works since I started writing thrillers, I thought, well, how did they know it was an accident? An accident. There were only 2 people there. So that was the plot for my fourth book.
And what are you doing next?
Well, I'm writing my 5th book now. It will be out in March. So my 5th book is based on something my mother mentioned years ago about somebody she knew. I can't remember if they were a friend or someone she knew through work, but somebody who was on holiday, on their honeymoon, I think. On holidays or on their honeymoon. And they were on a beach with their husband and he disappeared and was never seen again. So that is the plot for my newest book.
Ooh, I love that. That sounds like something right out of a television news program. And you mentioned before that you use your characters are based on people you know. So do people come up to you, or if you just meet people and they say, "Hey, can you put me in the book? Can you include me somehow?"
No. When I say they're based on people I know, I mean, I might take 2 or 3 people I know and then kind of lump them together into one character. But generally, that's how the character starts. After a while, they turn into their own person.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And are you portrayed in any of your books? No version of you at all?
No, not me at all. I know they say that there's a bit of you in every character you write. And I suppose there must be, because, I mean, at least it gives some idea of your worldview. But I mean, I write about murderers. I wrote about a man who killed an entire family in their own home. I mean, that is not me. I never thought about killing anyone.
Well, that's good news. We do have a comment from our lovely co-host who's not here, DIANN Floyd Bames. She writes, "Wow, you are writing wonderful thrillers. Congratulations."
Oh, thank you so much, DIANN.
Thanks for watching, DIANN. Appreciate it. So Val, I'm interested to hear about the names in your book. You said that you have Irish names. Is that right?
But only the main character is Irish. So her name is Aoife. And Aoife, I named her Aoife because she's in her early 20s when the series starts. And sometimes it seems like every second girl in Ireland in her early 20s is called Aoife, right? Aoife or Kira is about it. So then I decided that I know if you ever try to read books in foreign languages, it can get very complicated if they have all these names that you don't understand. So I decided that what I'd do is I'd make the lesser characters, I give them Irish names. So they only turn up 2 or 3 times in the whole book. But at the beginning of my book, I put at the beginning of the book, I have a little video, if you're on the ebook, or in my Instagram page, a little video telling you how to pronounce the names. So I've used very common Irish names like Niamh and Oren's not that common actually, but he's very easy to pronounce. Or Cian is one of the guys, Rianach, Emer. What else have I got? I've got loads of very, very common Irish names, but I can't think of them all right now. But Cueva is an incredibly common Irish name as well, and it's not one that's heard very often outside of Ireland, so I thought I'd include that.
Thank you so much. And I love how you put together an Instagram or a way for people to actually understand how to pronounce the names. So that's great.
I do that on my Instagram page for every book, and then I do it and a link in the front of if you're reading my ebook, a link in the front of my ebook where you can listen to that video as well.
Excellent. And I'm really interested to find out, were you surprised when I think you said 3 out of your 4 books became Amazon #1 bestsellers?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I did was I was really lucky because BookBub chose them all as featured deals. Now, I didn't know when I printed my first book that I could do that, so I didn't actually send it off to BookBub, but the other 3 went to BookBub. So, do you know BookBub, Dr. JACALYN?
I've heard of BookBub and I signed up for it. I get emails, but I don't really know what it is.
Exactly. So what BookBub do is they send out emails to millions of readers every day. So in order to get to get a BookBub feature deal, you have the editors in BookBub, they handpick every single book that they put into their newsletters. And because of that, the readers who get them trust the quality of the books. So if you can get into that, I mean, it's just marvelous for authors. Authors would kill to get a BookBub feature deal, basically. So if you can get one of those, you get loads and loads of sales in one day, and it kind of wanders off into second and third day. So if you do that, it's really easy to get to #1, actually. So without BookBub, I would never have had a hope.
So I'm all ears because I've published 2 books and I have another one coming out. Tell us how this works with BookBub. You sign up and then what do you do?
Well, no, you just go onto their website and then you apply for a feature deal, right? And you have no say in whether they'll pick you or not. They just pick what they figure will work with their audience.
Okay, I learned something. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And the other thing is it depends on the time of year. So, if you do, say, self-help books, they're probably likely to be at the beginning of the year when people are interested in those, or maybe at the end of the year for Christmas. So you might not be lucky the first time you go because it might not be the right time of year. But if you keep applying, you can keep applying all the time. You can apply every single month.
So does your book have to be published before you apply?
Yes, it has to be out a while. If you don't have a decent number of reviews, they won't consider it.
Oh, okay. I love doing this work because I always learn something. So thank you so much for that, Val. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'd love to have you read for us from one of your books.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. So please do stay with us. We will be right back. We're going to watch some sponsorships and we're going to spotlight the lovely DIANN FLOYD BOEHM. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly.
Kapayapaan, kapayapaan, kapayapaan.
DIANN FLOYD BOEHM's A Song of Peace tells the story of a young lad named Tommy whose fervent wish for peace on earth touches the hearts of his friends and family, spreads to his community, and eventually unites the whole world around making his dream of peace a reality for everyone. Sit down with the children in your life and share Tommy's amazing story of love and hope. Sing your own song of peace and invite the children to join you. Tommy's tale is more than just a story. It's a movement, and everyone's warmly welcome to take part.
Kapayapaan, 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 kapayapaan.
You'll find A Song of Peace, along with many other wonderful learning and enriching opportunities for children of all ages, at DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Story Garden. Your host, Diann BOEHM. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Diann Floyd BOEHM tells wonderful stories that warm the heart, spark the imagination, and unite people and families across generations. For children, Diann's Harry the Camel connects with all of us who've ever wondered how different our lives might have been if only we'd been born something better, like a wonderful horse instead of an ordinary camel. In the end, we all learn along with Harry that there's nothing better than just being yourself. Diann's Little Girl in the Moon looks down on earthbound children and wonders if they know she's just like them. A story of love, home, and the bond between mother and daughter, its powerful theme that we're each of us different yet all of us the same plants a seed in children that promises to blossom within a loving and trusting grown-up. Diann's new biography, Rise, recounts the experiences of her grandmother, Ruby, to reveal the hidden strength of the human spirit. Ruby's story inspires all of us to become the best versions of ourselves. You'll find all of Diann's delightful books and much more at DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com. Visit DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com. That's DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com.
To take a libel case against Nancy, and they asked their lawyers to look into that. Now, Aoife's friend works for this legal firm. So she asks Aoife, who also works as a freelance journalist, if she'll interview Nancy and try to find out what's going on. So the bit I'm reading is Aoife's interview with Nancy. Okay, so Aoife had never been to Step Aside before, but it wasn't an area. Sorry, I'll start again. Aoife had been in Step Aside before, but it wasn't an area she knew well. About the only place she recognised was the police station, and that was because a local politician had driven the entire country crazy with his endless campaign to get it reopened. For about 3 minutes, Aoife enjoyed an unobstructed view of the Dublin mountains. Then her sat-nav told her to turn left. She was then in a large housing estate with well-spaced-out detached houses set on a steep downward slope. The estate was swarming with children. A young boy on a tricycle tried to race her down the hill. Aoife didn't know whether to be amused or alarmed. She slowed to a crawl to avoid hitting him. The boy pumped his fist in the air and shouted to all his friends that he had won the race. Halfway down the hill, Aoife reached a 4-storey apartment block. She rang the bell for the top floor and Nancy buzzed her in. The tiny lifts in some apartment blocks made Aoife nervous, so she took the stairs. When she pushed open the heavy fire door, she found herself in a small square corridor facing 4 numbered doors. Aoife knocked on the door of number 33. After reading Orla's notes, Aoife had pictured a grey-haired, absent-minded woman whose conversation trailed off mid-sentence, the type of woman who might imagine she saw events that never happened. The woman who opened the door and invited her inside was in her late 50s, with short, dark hair cut into a sharp bob and in an efficient manner. She led Aoife into a large, airy room with cream walls and a beige carpet. At the far end, there was a corner unit that held various pieces of what looked like china and the old-style Waterford cut glass. On top of the unit were family photos. A few looked like school photos, but they were too far away for Aoife to see clearly. Nancy offered her tea, which Aoife refused, but she accepted a glass of water. They talked for a little about Dublin traffic and how great it was to get away for the weekend. Nancy explained that she and her husband had owned a tiny house in the city centre, but when the area had become gentrified, they'd sold it, making enough of a profit to buy both this apartment and the house in Liscannor. Best thing that ever happened to us. My sister lived on the next street and she made a fortune selling hers as well. It's a pity we had already sold our parents' house. We could be rich now. After what felt like a reasonable amount of time, Aoife brought the subject around to the interview. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me, Nancy. I'm very happy to talk to you. I was stunned when the police said they weren't pressing charges, but at least it means I can give you interviews now. What newspaper are you with? I'm freelance. I write the story and then sell it to whichever newspaper wants to print it. Well, that's okay. The more newspapers that print my story, the better I like it. That little scumbag thinks he can use his daddy's money to shut me up. He has no idea who he's dealing with. I will not let anybody intimidate me, especially that useless, entitled, pathetic excuse for a human being. You seem very angry. I'm furious. Do you know his lawyers threatened me? Legal cases are very expensive, Mrs. Duggan. You could lose your home, Mrs. Duggan. The cheek of them. If his family wasn't rich, he'd be in prison by now. But it's one law for the rich and another for the rest of us, isn't it? It certainly appears that way sometimes. So let me see if I understand what's going on. You claim you saw Ben push his friend off the edge of a cliff, right? Exactly. And this was 8:30 in the morning. Yes. Aoife took out her notebook. Tell me about that morning, Nancy. Do you normally go for walks at 8 a.m.? Nancy adjusted the cushion behind her back, but she sat ramrod straight. Not really. During the summer, we spend most weekends in Liscannor, so we often do the cliff walk from there to the visitor centre. That weekend, we decided to walk the entire way to Doolin, but we figured 3 hours in that heat would be too much, so we planned to break it at the visitor centre. We started early because we wanted to get there before the tour buses arrived. You were about 30 minutes into your walk when you saw Oran and his friends, right? Where were they? About halfway between Liscannor and the visitor centre. The 2 boys had climbed down onto a ledge. The girls were sitting above them. How wide was the ledge? About 3 feet by 5 feet. Did your husband notice them? No, he was looking out at the ocean. What attracted your attention? I couldn't believe it when I saw them on that ledge. I mean, it's a 700-foot drop. Almost every year somebody dies on those cliffs. There are signs all over the place saying the edge can crumble away at any time, and those boys went climbing down onto ledges. How stupid is that? Did you point them out to your husband? No, Jim would have said they were adults and it was their own business if they wanted to risk their lives. How long were you watching them? I'd say about 4 or 5 minutes, the first time I saw them. At that stage, Owen was at the edge, standing on 1 foot, taking a selfie. Then the friend took his picture. When the path twisted, they were out of sight. What were the girls doing? They were sitting on the grass verge above the boys. They were the same level as me, but a bit off the actual path. How long were they out of your sight? Maybe 3 minutes? When we turned the corner, they came into view again. It was just in time to see the friend take a few steps towards Oren, put his hands on his shoulders and shove him off the edge. So you don't know if there was an argument of any kind. Did you hear shouting? No. I read the only interview that Ben gave. I presume you read it too. Oh yes, the Irish Times no less. Getting his side of the story to his own kind. God forbid he'd ever lower himself to speak to a paper that people actually read. In that interview, Ben said he put his hands out to save Oren, and you must have misunderstood what you saw. Of course I did. Us stupid, uneducated people can't tell the difference between someone falling off a ledge and being pushed. That's what he wants everyone to believe, isn't it? Possibly. After Owen was pushed, what happened? Nancy swallowed. The poor boy screamed. His arms flayed all over the place and he went over the edge. I screamed. The girls screamed. I think the friend screamed, but I'm not sure. They all ran to the edge and looked over. My husband phoned the emergency services. I told him to go down to the girls and stay with them until the guards arrived. I didn't want that pig murdering anyone else. You didn't go with him. I couldn't. My legs felt so weak I just sat on the ground where I was until the police came to take my statement. You know that the two girls say it was an accident. Yes, that's one of the reasons police didn't press charges. But they share a house with that scumbag. Obviously, they're lying to protect him. They share a house with Oren too. Wouldn't they want justice for him? Nancy shrugged. Who knows what they want? I certainly don't. I've worked in accounts all my life. I deal in facts, not assumptions. I saw what I saw. So although you don't know why they're lying, you're quite sure Oren didn't lose his balance. He did lose his balance, but not until his friend put out his hands and shoved him. Do you know that Oren's parents are convinced it was an accident? They say Oren and Ben were like brothers, and there's no way Ben would ever hurt their son. But they're not very good judges of character then. Nancy's face softened. I shouldn't have said that. I feel so sorry for his parents. Their lives will never be the same again. Aoife nodded. I can't even imagine what it would be like to lose a child, but then to discover that his murderer was someone you welcomed into your home. Did you know the two families went on holidays together? For a moment, Aoife thought Nancy might cry. Then her face hardened. I wish Oren's parents didn't have to go through this, but I'm going to make sure that that scumbag never hurts anyone again. I might not be able to get him locked away, but I can and I will make sure everybody knows what a vicious, evil toe rag he is. He will not get away with what he did, not while I have breath in my body.
Oh, Val, keep reading. I want to hear more. I'm right there with you. That was amazing.
What an awful pity I'm not an actress. I could actually read it properly.
No, you really drew me in. I'm just like, I need more. I need to read this.
Oh, well, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere, actually.
We're going to actually go over to your website too to take a look there. But so I want to ask you some questions about the scene. So for example, in the building, the apartment building, the four doors, is this something that you actually, does this building exist or you created this?
No, I kind of based it. I have a friend who lives in that area, so I kind of based it in her apartment, but the inside of her apartment doesn't look like that.
Okay. And then when we're going back to Nancy and the walk, and does that place actually exist?
The Cliffs of Moher. Oh yes, the Cliffs of Moher is famous. It's one of the most famous land sites in Ireland. So anyone who's even thought of coming to Ireland will know where the Cliffs of Moher is.
And are there ledges like you described, that ledge?
Oh yeah, there's a whole path you can walk for 3 hours by the side of the path, and there's a 700-foot drop down. People die there quite a lot, but you see people doing really crazy things like climbing up on ledges and standing there. But the whole because the area is very unstable, there are barriers telling you not to go past a certain stage. People do it all the time, and occasionally then the cliff will just give way and people fall down into the water. Happened a few years ago. The young student, he came there for the day. He was taking pictures and he was gone.
But in that case, he wasn't murdered, right?
Oh, no, a lot of people. No, nobody's ever been murdered there. A few people have committed suicide, but nobody's ever been murdered that we know of.
Okay. Well, I love the way that you write and the way you describe everything. I can even see like moving the cushion behind her back and what she thought she was going to look like, and then what she does look like. That is very well written.
Oh, that's so kind of you, Dr. JACALYN. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I want to share my screen and have us look at your website. Would that be okay?
Of course.
Okay, let's take a look. All right. I'm over here on your website. So tell me where I should go.
Okay, so that's my first book, if my most recent book. So if it's going backwards, so The Silent Speak was the book before that, and the book before that will come up in a second now, which was, yeah, Only Lies Remain, and then my first book, which was Girl Targeted.
Okay. Now tell us about the covers.
Okay, so my covers have all been done by Patrick Knowles. When I spoke to him about my first book, he said to me, are you going to make a series out of this? And by the time I was doing the covers, I knew I was. So then he said he would design, he would come up with a design that would suit a series. So if you look at the print and all of them, it's exactly the same. There's a theme running through them all.
Fabulous. And can you tell us a little bit about your other books?
Okay, so the very first book is Girl Targeted. So my books are character driven, so the main character is Aoife. Okay, so when the first book starts, Aoife is a young woman in her early 20s. She's married and she's heavily pregnant with her first child. She's working as an office temp. So she gets a job in an office in Dublin, and her second day in the company, she arrives in the morning to find her boss hanging from the ceiling. Okay, so then she goes on maternity leave. When she returns from maternity leave, the police have investigated and they've decided that it was murder. So Aoife sees this as her opportunity to get into journalism, because she trained as a journalist, but she couldn't get work in that field. But now she's a baby and she wants to be able to control her own schedule, and she sees freelance journalism as the answer. And she figures she's a unique perspective on this murder because she discovered the victim, and she's now working with people who've known the victim for years. So she figures that she can interview them and they won't even know they're being interviewed and find out all about it. So that's how it starts. And then there's a subplot that runs through all the stories, which is Aoife's relationship. So in book one, she's married, but her relationship with her husband, she thinks it's absolutely perfect. But as the story develops and people are trying to kill her and her husband doesn't seem to care, she begins to wonder, what kind of a man has she married, basically.
So Val, does one need to read every book in order? Does that make the most? No. Okay.
No. They're all standalone thrillers. So they were all written, because I never, when I write the book, ever had a plan to write the next book. They are all written as self-contained books. And there's enough backstory in all of them for you to know about Aoife's life. Aoife's life is the only thing that's continued from one story to the next. So in the first book, she's at the very beginning, she's pregnant with her first child. In book 5, she has a 5-year-old.
Okay, thank you. Tell us about Only Lies Remain.
Only Lies Remain is, in book 1, it mentions that Aoife's father-in-law, who she never met, walked out in his family when his sons were young. So at the beginning of book 2 of book Only Lies Remain, his body is found, and the police suspect that Aoife's mother-in-law, Maura, might have been involved in the murder. Now, Aoife used to be incredibly close to her mother-in-law because she lost both her parents when she was 18, and she got married when she was 18, so she saw Maura as her substitute mother. But their relationship was kind of damaged by the first book, Girl Targeted, but she still feels very responsible for her and very close to her. So she tries to investigate to find out who actually was the murderer. Right.
Wow, I love it. I can't wait to buy your books and start reading. What about The Silent Speak?
Okay, so in The Silent Speak, Aoife, 2 members of Aoife's book club are murdered. An entire family are actually murdered in their own home. 2 parents and 3 little children. And two of the 2 adults were members of Aoife's book club. So Aoife's sorry, I'm getting confused here. So the police decide that the husband murdered his family and then killed himself. But his sister doesn't believe that's true. So she approaches Aoife, who she knows, there are other ways she knows Aoife, but it would be kind of spoiling the story if I told you how she knew them. So she approaches Aoife and she asks Aoife to look into it. So Aoife investigates to find out who actually murdered the whole family, and was it actually the husband.
So Aoife is around death and murder quite frequently, right? She's
seem to be tied to them a lot. All right. Now, the only thing I would say, because when I describe those books, it does sound sometimes like they're quite graphic, and they're not at all. Because it's like, for instance, she finds her boss hanging from the ceiling in the first book, but it only mentions that. It doesn't go into any graphic details. I don't do graphic violence at all.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. And let's see, we didn't talk about Where Loyalties Lie, right?
I read the bit of Where Loyalties
That's where you read from. Okay, perfect. I love that. Okay, and Val, what would you like people to know about you? If you think about, we know you're an author. What else do you want people to say that they know about you, just from a personal perspective?
Know about me as an author, or know about me as a person?
Person.
Oh, as a person. What can I say about me as a person? I love singing. I sing constantly. People are always asking me to shut up. My favorite thing to do is to drive along the car, preferably, well, always on my own, because anybody else would kill me. And I play music really loud and I scream at the top of my voice. So the entire place, a husband of a friend of mine saw me one day at traffic lights, and he said to his friend, he said to his wife, I don't know whether she's having a fight with somebody or what she was doing, she said, but she was screaming in that car. And that was me singing at the top of my voice.
I love that. I love to sing as well. What kind of music do you like to sing?
Oh, 80s music mostly.
Okay.
I love 80s music, yeah.
I love
listen to
70s.
it. No, I never really cared for 70s music much. I like Adele, which is like, I suppose, 90s music, but for the most, I like 80s music.
And would you say that you are a professional singer?
Oh, good God, no. Every time I sing, people say to me, shut up. And I have an awful habit of singing the same 4 lines of a song over and over and over again. I have tortured people with it. I used to work with this guy, and I remember him saying to me one day, don't you think the 4 hours of the French national anthem is enough? I just get, and I only know 4 to 4 bars of it nearly, but I just get a tune into my head and I can't get it out.
And do you imagine that you're on a stage performing when you're singing?
No, most of the time I don't even know I'm singing. I might be working away and doing something else. And because this song is going around in my head, I just start singing along with it. I don't even know I'm doing it half the time. But it really, really irritates people.
Well, thank you for being so transparent and sharing that. I appreciate it.
You know what to avoid. Don't come across me in the car.
And Val, for people who are watching and they're aspiring writers, but they just can't get it finished, what tips do you have for how somebody can go from not publishing anything to getting it published?
Oh yeah, do it in stages. I did it in stages. I didn't start and say, I'm going to write a whole book. I started and said, I'm going to read about writing and see what I need to do, first of all. And then after I did that, I said, okay, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to write something and I'm going to get my friends and family to read it, which was incredibly difficult because nobody wanted to read it. They all said afterwards they were afraid to tell me I was useless. And then after that, I went to a class so that people could give me some feedback. And then I realized after that wasn't enough feedback for me at all. I needed one-to-one help. So after that, I did a mentoring session with Cornerstone's literary agency, where this lovely lady called Debs Hobbs-Wyatt, she worked with me for a year on my first book. So she went through every single line of it with me. But by the time I had spent a year rewriting it, and I'd spent a year, and I paid her for that, obviously, there was no way I wasn't going to publish a book. So I'd say start with small stages. And then by the time you get to the stage where you're getting to publish it, you're so invested, you wouldn't even consider not publishing it at that stage.
Brilliant tip. Thank you so much, Val. We have your information here, but for people who are not able to read your banner or they're listening on the radio, what's the best way for people to reach you, and who would you like to contact you?
Oh, everybody. I love readers contacting me. I'm on Instagram, so an awful lot of Instagram people have contacted me when they're reading my book, and some of them have told me as they're reading it what they're thinking. So sometimes they say, oh, I'm on page 50, I'm quite sure XYZ is the murderer. And then they might come back, well, I'm on page 100, I think maybe it's somebody else. I absolutely adore that. I mean, there's nothing better really than knowing how somebody feels as they're reading a book. So did you say where would people find me? I'm on www.valcollins.com. books.com. That's my website. You can contact me there. I'm on almost every type of, I think actually every type of social media under @Val Collins Books, but mostly I just post on Instagram.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll be following you and ordering your book. So I appreciate it. And
Thank
thanks to everybody.
I'll have a look out for yours.
Fantastic. And thanks to each and every one of you who are watching, whether it's on the live or the replay. We really do appreciate it. Please go over to Val's website, go over to Amazon, purchase her books. Again, her website is valcollinsbooks.com. All right. Thank you so much. We'll be signing off for now. And our next show is the Film and Music Show. We'll be coming right back. Thanks again, Val. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. JACALYN. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.